Hi, this is Neville Douglas from Ashanti Dutch Property Investments. As you can see there, what we're going to look at today is the type of properties that I look for. So what I've done is I've agreed to deal with another property, and what we're going to do is we're going to walk through the house. We will look at the condition of the house. I'll talk to you about the things that I think need to be done in the house, and then before we leave, we'll talk at the sort of typical kind of yield that we've got. So we'll start with the front of the house first, and I'll go through what I look for. At the front of the house, firstly, this one's been rendered. The render isn't in an absolutely fantastic condition, but it's not necessarily in a poor condition either. You've got the air bricks down there, you can see those. Okay, that is important to make sure they're clear if you've got a suspended floor, because what happens if you've got a wooden floor and they aren't kept clear, you will tend to find that you might get damp under the floor, or sorry, what you will get is you could get dry rot. So you've got to ensure that if you're seeing a property which is being rendered, you need to find those if it's got a suspended floor and make sure that they're unblocked. This one here obviously is blocked, but the floor in the house has been changed over and the floor is now a solid concrete floor. If you look down the street, there's no for sale signs, no to let signs. There is a property there, and I'll tell you why that one is on the market. That one has been on the market quite a few times. It's by an alleyway, and you tend to find that kids are congregating in that alleyway. So as a result, and I'll go inside as I talk about that, what you tend to find is because kids congregate there, the landlord tends to have a problem renting that property. The children come into that property, go by the alleyway, cause a nuisance. So in regards to this property, what I'm going to do is walk you around it so you can have a look at it. So as you come through the front door, you can see that that is in a good condition. It's UPVC, so you haven't got to replace that. Stamping on the floors there, you can see that the floor is a solid concrete floor, so that's why it doesn't matter if the air bricks are being covered up. We've got a consumer unit here, and it has got, I think, yes, it's got a token meter in there. So I think this one's been rented out before. In fact, I know it's been rented out before, and it's come to the end of its natural life as a rental property. So that's what you can see there with that one. If you look on the inside, you've got the gas cut meter as well, which is on a token meter system. That's a good idea, obviously, if you're going to get people in the property and you don't know how long you're going to stay and you don't want to be responsible. You can tend to find there that there's a little bit of damage as such, where they've got screws and stuff going in. I thought it was going to be, sorry, I'll zoom out in there so I'll see the detail with that one. It's wallpapered, so it's not Artex. Having said that, there is Artex there and there is Artex on the ceiling. My recommendation is to get that kind of thing skimmed over. There is at the moment an issue in regards to whether or not Artex contains asbestos. That needs to be checked out, to be honest, and in the next few weeks I will be doing an interview with a company that can advise on whether or not you should be having asbestos checks done on properties that you're buying that you think might be an issue. That's going to be an interesting discussion. There's a few bits and bobs of furniture in here, as you can see, because it was recently tenanted and someone's moved out. As you look around, you can see there that they've got radiators on the wall, so that's a good thing, because you haven't got the expense of having to try and get a full central heating system fitted in the property. You do have and the positioning where it is, one could argue that it could be moved, and that's something that you could look at doing. But having said that, it is already there, so it's something that you haven't got to pay for. As you look through, you've got the doorway, so we're walking through, and now we're going into the rear reception, as I call it. It's a bit dark because there isn't. I've spoken to the vendor, and they're not sure when it was last rewired. So you've got an old consumer unit in there, so that would need to be taken care of at some stage, and a full rewire would be recommended. I've had a damp meter through here, and there is damp in the property. You can see over there where there's a line on the wall. I think that's where it's been re-rendered to try and mitigate damp issues there. But I would definitely recommend that a full damp-proof course be done in this property. And also there are one or two that I have used which haven't worked. I would recommend that you go for having all the plaster chopped off up to 1 metre high. The reason that they do that is because there's things called interstitial salts which are absorbed from the brickwork when it gets damp, or that does come out of the plaster, or whether or not it was a cement render that was there. So you need to chop that off because the salt which has come to the surface will just absorb the moisture in the room and continually keep that wall wet. So that's why you need to chop off all of the cement, all of the plaster which is on the wall, and have a cement render, or I think it's Gyprock do a specialist cement, a specialist plaster render that will also act as a waterproof barrier. So if there is any sort of water penetration, it will keep it out and it'll keep the wall dry. So that's what's got to be done. Come through to the kitchen, typical galley type kitchen really in a terrace property. There are still a few items in here, but as you can see, the work unit protrudes out a little bit past the doorway, so you could always reduce the width of the unit on that side just to give it a bit more room. The doors are in sound condition, to be honest. They just need cleaning down, and these are flush doors, as they call them, because obviously they flush. But having said that, these are good quality flush doors. When you knock it, like I did then when I tapped, you can hear that it's quite solid, so it's not one of the hollow doors. And in regards to tapping as well, if you tap the plaster on the walls like what I'm doing, there you got the old boiler there, which is a glowworm, and I've had one of those removed recently. It still works, but it's not really efficient. I think they have to be A-rated boilers that go into these properties now, a combination boiler as well, so it saves on space. So that will need to be removed, and the kitchen will need to be revamped as well. Get a sink in here. You've got a washing machine, and I think this is a dishwasher, I think, that's in here. But you can get them integrated, and you'd have to have a look at basically the width of the room to see if you could fit the units in and make better use of the room. Yeah, cylinder cupboard is, and this is in the kitchen. If you have a combination boiler installed in here, potentially you could remove this, take that out of the way, and as long as it's a non-load bearing wall, which it isn't, it's a stud wall, so somebody's created this in the kitchen, you could remove that and you could actually utilize that room there so that you could extend this. That said, you've got to be careful because you've got a door which is on that side which is opening inwards, so you probably might have to rehang the door so it opens out, or have a sliding door which goes towards that direction. But there's so many different things that you can do with it. And as you come through the bathroom, there's a separate extension, so you can see that you've got a bit of a step down here. In regards to the doorway, you could even have it out on the outside here, on this outside wall, and have it sliding towards there. Perhaps it's one of those things that you'd have to toy around with for yourself, have a chat with your builder, and just see which is the best option. Pipe work coming through here again. The boiler could be moved if you had a combination boiler, so you've got the boiler there in the kitchen at the moment. That could go perhaps here with a little bit of a stud work or something like that, or even a shelf, but at least the boiler's out of the way then, so it's not in the main part of the building. And this space isn't being utilised, so you'd make better space of it having it out here as opposed to having it in the kitchen where it is at the moment. You could also vent through the roof, so you could have it against this wall here and you could have a flue going up and out, and you could vent it that way, or you could use the famous clobber tile that I like to talk about, where you could then have it vented through the roof as well, so you just wouldn't have to have a fixed what's the word for it, outlet as such. You could have a flexible duct and you'd still be able to vent the boiler. Excuse me for tripping on my words, I'm just thinking about everything else I've got to be doing in here. Obviously the bathroom is pink, nothing wrong with pink if you like pink. Not much more to say about that. It just needs changing around a little bit, needs modernising, but you've got the room in here again. You've got a standard bath, and you've got the toilet, radiator in here again. So you see, you've got parts or components of a full central heating system in here, so you wouldn't have to spend so much. If you look again under there, you've got the window, which is a UPVC window, once again, you've got a solid flush door. There's nothing up with these doors. I would leave it.